Thank you for this great nation you've given us to live in. We thank you for the many blessings that you bestow us with every day. And our congressmen, dear Lord, and our delegates, dear Lord, and our state senators, Lord. And we thank you for each and every one of them that have taken on the challenge of their jobs, dear Lord, and ask that you guide and direct them and everything is done today. And we thank you so much for everything that you do every day for us. And thank you for helping us through each and every day. And dear Lord, we thank you for the most precious gift that you could give anybody today would be the Lord Jesus Christ. Thank you for that, and we thank you for the forgiveness of our sins. In his name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Ed, would you lead us in the pledge?
Well, everybody rise, please. Hand over your heart unless you're undercover, veteran. You can render the hand salute. Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Virginia Republican Creed. We believe that the free enterprise system is the most productive supplier of human needs and economic justice, that all individuals are entitled to equal rights, justice, and opportunities, and should assume their responsibilities as citizens in a free society, that fiscal responsibility and budgetary restraint must be exercised at all levels of government, that the federal government must preserve individual liberty by preserving constitutional limitations, that peace is best preserved through a strong national defense, that faith in God, as recognized by our founding fathers, is essential to the moral fiber of the nation.
Teresa, you ready with the treasurer's report?
Yes, sir. Let's see. Last month we had a balance of $2,651.27. We received $315 in donations and membership dues. So we did not have any disbursements this month, so the balance is $2,966.27.
And when are dues coming due for our,
April.
for the April meeting, so, don't forget to bring your dues next month when you come to the April meeting, if you can think about it. Randy, you have the minutes for us, please?
Minutes for February 12, 2019. Steve Martin gave the invocation. Chris Horton led the Pledge of Allegiance, and Mark Monday led the Republican Creed. Chairman Vance Wilkins called the meeting to order at 7 p.m. Committee observed a moment of silence in memory of Trooper Lucas Dowell. The first order of business was the New Year's resolutions that were sent out following discussion at the January ACRC meeting. Letters were sent by email, and Vance brought enough copies to the meeting for each member to have and complete a copy. Copies attached to the minutes. Each form were distributed to all the attendees. Treasurer's report was $2,663.85 in previous balance. We received $120 in dues, $350 from the 6th district for winning a grant application, $243.88 refund from AEP for the headquarters. The expenses were $219.29, reimbursement to Ann Wilkins for food for the golf tournament and election night at the headquarters, $412.17 reimbursed to Vance Wilkins for Wi-Fi equipment and service for the headquarters, $35 to the 6th district for a check, and the new balance would be $27.11.27. Minutes from the January ACRC meeting were read by Randy Hoylman. There being no objections, additional corrections, the minutes were approved as read. Ginger Berg discussed the idea of sponsoring a fishing tournament this year to raise funds. We will have to work with the community and the fishermen to develop this and to ensure that we can schedule an event without conflicting with other established tournaments and events. Depending on the strength of committee involvement in these activities, we could also continue the golf tournament. This fundraising is necessary to cover expenses for campaign headquarters and materials. Vance announced that the review of election materials from the November party canvass will be on Saturday, February 23rd, 2019. Volunteers are needed to assist with this activity. We hope to extract data that will develop our contact list for future Republican candidates and campaigns. RPV has agreed to assist in development of a list from extracted voter numbers if we can provide the information. Options for candidate nominations for local offices were reviewed. Teresa Allman moved to have ACRC nominations by a mass meeting this year. Not sure who seconded it, but there was no discussion and the question was called. The ayes were unanimous, there were no nays. We will hold a mass meeting for nominations later this spring. In other new business came a discussion of the committee presence in various social media. The ACRC has a Facebook page, Amherst County Republican Committee, an independent website, www.amherstcountygop.org, and a Twitter address, which is Amherst County GOP. There's no Snapchat or Instagram presence currently. Jeff Porter noted that committee website needs updating. The headquarters is indicated to be still open. Vance requested anyone with interest or experience in any of the social media to help in getting the ACRC presence out there. The following new member applications were reported to the committee: Robert Hopkins, Gary Ahern, Nathan Wilkins, Jane Wilkins, Samuel Bryant, Finley Allman, Robert Berg, Lee Horton, and Bonnie Boyle. Chris Horton moved to accept these applicants as committee members, second by Claudia Tucker. The question was called and the vote was all ayes with no nays heard. These new members are welcome to the ACRC. Steve Martin announced that there is a petition to have the bridge at the south entrance of Route 29 business into Amherst at the Amherst Shopping Center dedicated in memory of Trooper Lupus Dowell. Senator Peake will assist with this effort. Response to this has been overwhelming and committee members were able to sign the petition at the meeting. Guests Jeff Porter and John Ahern were welcome. Fernando Espinoza reported on the General Assembly. Delegate Ronnie Campbell has introduced 10 bills in the General Assembly and 4 budget amendments. 7 of these bills have been passed on to the Senate. Delegate Campbell will be opening an office in Amherst, located at Ben Klein's old office location. This will be the only office for Mr. Campbell. Weekly newsletters are issuing from Delegate Campbell. Mr. Espinoza had copies for the committee. Discussion of HB 1979, Delegate Campbell voted nay, ensued but was constrained by lack of current information on the revised bill. On the motion of Noel DePalma, seconded by Randy Hoylman, the meeting was adjourned. Respectfully submitted, Randy Hoylman, Secretary.
Are your minutes correctly recorded? Does anyone have any amendments or suggestions and corrections? Hearing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
It's moved by Noel and seconded by Ed to approve the minutes as read. Minutes signify, approved, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are approved, Mr. Secretary. All right, under the old business, I wanna do this report here. A lot of y'all weren't here at the last meeting, but the ones who were here, a whole bunch of them signed this New Year's resolution and put down what they could do to help us improve this party, to get more done, to raise more money, to do all the things that the party should be doing. And I really, really appreciate that. It's just, you know, we say we don't have time to do things, but we just ask for a little bit, what you can give without hurting yourself. And I really appreciate what you all who have had a chance to sign this have done. Just with what we have now, we have over $100 has been pledged each month to help us to raise funds just for what they can give. Some of it's $1, some a little more, just, you know, just whatever you can do without hurting yourself, that's all we're asking. And you've really done great. I'm really encouraged by it. And I'm gonna, if I can stand it, unless somebody, I'm gonna give some more to the ones who weren't here last time. Brandon, Chris, y'all give these out to anybody who didn't get one last time. It wasn't here, because a lot of people weren't here last time.
I have to pass me out, Mr. Chairman, but we did have received 4 of them.
You got 4 in it?
4 new ones
Oh,
have
4,
come in.
oh, so that's great. Well, see, we even got better than I know about. But I'm really so pleased that I'm gonna take whatever you put down, you're gonna put the largest amount down of the number of hours, or the largest dollars, the largest poll shifts. I'm gonna match it. Because I really am thankful that y'all did this, and you just made me feel so much better about our party and the things we can do if we really get together. So So I'm gonna try to match the highest one on the sheet that everybody turns in. So somebody don't really snook me now, but, give me a little mercy, but I really have appreciated of what y'all have done. We can do some great things here. And I just hope we can keep things going straight to do that, because the potential here is great. It really is. We got some good folks here. Some really good folks. All right, that's the chairman's report. Chris, well, he's busy, but,
What is it?
Chris, are you ready to give me a report on the social media?
I just want to remind everybody that we do have a Facebook account, and we do have a website. Facebook, or the website account is amherstcounty.org. Facebook is Amherst County Republicans. You put that in the list, you'll find out Facebook, and then there's also a Twitter account, Amherst County GOP, to find that one. We're also bringing up a Instagram. That's a little bit different. I might be a little bit old for it, but I guess a lot of the young folks are using Instagram, and basically what that entails is putting a picture with a few lines on there. So with that, if anybody has any pictures around town, if you're at a community event or something that we can put on there that we want to share to kind of generate some interest and buzz, go ahead and forward that to me. If you see anything that we should add, let me know. If you see anything, if you have any recommendations for it, please let me know, and we'll move on that.
Okay, and, well, you have another on the new business, I'll wait to let you do that then. All right, now, if we have anybody that's really good at some of this stuff, please let us know, because we can use some help. It's hard for one person to keep up with all the things we need to post and things like that. Anything else on the old business anybody would like to bring up? Okay, we go to new business. Fishing tournament, Jen, you got a report on that, please?
Yes, I spoke with Ron, but not since last night. But we have a date set, it's gonna be June 15th. It's going to be at Smith Mountain Lake. And it's gonna be $120 entry fee. That's per boat, for 2 fishermen per boat. It's gonna be starting, I believe, at 6 o'clock in the morning. So if we have any volunteers that are early risers, that'd be great. And we're hoping to have a big turnout and make some money and be able to have another headquarters this year.
Okay, Ron Slagle, who happens to be my son-in-law, is the big fisherman in the family, and he's gonna help with the tournament. He's supposed to be here tonight to give us, answer any questions someone may have. His first grandchild was born today, and he's gone to Harrison to see the grandkid. It's also my latest great-grandkid, so I guess we give him an excuse for not being here tonight, Mr. Secretary. But we think this will be a fun thing, and I think it should be a good fundraiser, and it's be good to try.
Oh, by the way, Ron did state that he's the favorite son-in-law, so.
They all say that. But, all right, Chris, on that contribution application.
Right now we're looking at the setting up a button for our website for donations. We've been kind of trying to work through some technical issues are pretty much resolved, and we just want to make sure that we're dotting all of our I's and crossing our T's to make sure that we're following our rules. Right now we're looking at a company called Antidote, and the way that's going to work is basically there's no fee to join. They charge 30 cents per transaction and 4% of whatever is sent in to us. So we're looking at that, and I heard today we might be looking at something else.
So we hope to have it up and running within a couple of weeks. So those of you who made your pledges, we need an easy way to do it, and rather than have to write a check every month. So, unless you want, we'll take it, because we get a little bit more that way, but at least we'll make it easy for those who don't want to fool with writing checks. Do we have any new members' applications at this, time?
Yes, sir. We have, Jerry Martin and Steve Martin.
Well, that's great. And are there dues with them too? Okay. Anyone else that you have that's on the,
That's all.
okay. Jerry and Steve Martin have applied for membership, looking for a motion right now. Noel makes a motion to accept them as members. Is there a second? Ed seconds? Any discussion?
No, I said a second.
Okay, another second. Hearing no discussion, I'll call for the question. As many as favor admission of Jerry and Steve to the committee, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Welcome, Steve, and tell Jerry we're looking forward to seeing her next time.
Thank you, she's at home today.
Well, sorry to hear that, but tell her we hope she is well soon then.
Thank you.
All right. At this point in time, we have a gentleman from Waynesboro who was instrumental in overturning what I felt was a really unfair, bad, and unconstitutional law that was on the books in Virginia for years and years and years. He was the leader of the movement to do that. He had to go through a lot of iterations to finally get it done. But he's here to give you and tell you exactly what happened to the Incumbent Protection Act that was in the Virginia Code. Ken Adams.
Thank you, Ben. You know, how much time do I have? 15 minutes. Got it. My name is Ken Adams, and I'm the chairman of the Waynesboro Republican Committee. And I bring you greetings from the Waynesboro Committee. Waynesboro is a city of 21,000, and we have an active committee. And we like to think we're not spectators. We like to think we're doers. And that's what I'm going to talk to you in the next 15 minutes and tell you about the Incumbent Protection Act. The Incumbent Protection Act has been on the books, a law for decades. What the Incumbent Protection Act said was that an incumbent politician could decide the method of his or her renomination, his or her party nomination, which meant if a person was elected to office, they could get reelected by whatever method the politician chose. It could be an open primary, it could be a convention, it could be a party canvass, also called a firehouse primary. What it did was it gave incumbent politicians an unfair advantage. First of all, it took the power away from the political parties and invested it in a single individual, and it provided an unfair advantage in this way. An incumbent politician always has an advantage with money because he's well-known. He will get, automatically it seems, large donations from primarily corporate donors. If you went on a website and looked at the donations that incumbent politicians receive, I think you'd be surprised. It's not individual donations from people like you or me. It'll be from the real estate industry, it'll be from the pharmaceutical industry, it'll be from the medical industry. And so an incumbent politician enters any race with more money than a challenger would ever have. Second advantage an incumbent politician would have is name recognition. An incumbent politician is frequently mentioned in the press and is well known in the community. So that's two outstanding advantages, money and name recognition. And to the third advantage, the incumbent politician could always name the method of renomination that he or she thought was the greatest advantage to that politician. And the result was politicians, incumbents, would remain in office perhaps longer than they should have been occupying that seat. In June of 2014, I was at a graduation party. At that party, I was speaking with John Worth, a friend of mine who's an attorney in Stanton, and Ann Fitzgerald, who is a member of the State Central Committee as a representative. She's on the 6th District Committee as a representative to the State Central Committee. And not surprisingly, the three of us, John Worth, Ann Fitzgerald, and myself, were talking politics. And as we talked about politics, the subject of the Incumbent Protection Act came up. And we all agreed it was a pernicious law and blatantly unconstitutional. And it's so unconstitutional that we believed we could explain it to a 10-year-old child, and the 10-year-old child will say, that's crazy, that you take away from the political party the right of the party to nominate a person, and you give it to an individual who has a stated profound interest in that decision. It's crazy. It's unconstitutional. And so we yammed back and forth, and then the party was over. That was June. Well, that conversation stayed in my brain until September. And I said, you know, somebody really should do something about that. So I invited John Worth, one of the three, to lunch. We went to lunch at a restaurant in Stanton. And I said, John, I'm thinking of challenging the Incumbent Protection Act. You're a lawyer, I'm not. We'll challenge it, we have to go to court. Will you help me? If John said, no, you're crazy, you're a nobody from nowhere, Waynesboro. Most people don't even know where Waynesboro is, and you want to go up against the Commonwealth of Virginia, the Attorney General's office. That's crazy. John Worth said, sure, I'll help you. So the first obstacle was overcome. So John and I began working on it. I was the chairman of the Legislative District Committee for Senate District 24, Amherst District. We had a meeting in December, and I presented to the Legislative District Committee the thought of overturning the Incumbent Protection Act. And we needed parties. There has to be a party in a lawsuit, the individual or organization that is suing. And so I said to the Legislative District Committee, will you join me in the suit to overturn the Incumbent Protection Act? The committee voted, and they said, yes, we'll do it. So now I had an attorney, I had one party, the Legislative District Committee for Senate District 24, and myself as an individual. So we had two parties, and we had a lawyer. And we filed suit in federal district court alleging a First Amendment violation of the freedom of association. We went to court in Harrisonburg. How am I going to do this? We went to court. We had an Obama judge who had just been appointed, and she threw out the case. I'm skipping over a lot because I'm running out of time. So we went to court. The new judge, Judge Dillon, said, you don't have standing. You're not associated. You're not connected to this issue at all. Even though you're a Republican committee and a committee chair, this doesn't involve you. You have no standing. You're out the door. So we took, this took a year and a half. In this time, we added more lawyers. We now had 3 lawyers. People came and volunteered, and resources appeared out of everywhere because what we were doing resonated. People cared about this. But we lost. And people were crestfallen. They said, well, they beat us, and there's not much we can do about that. So I stewed on that for a while. And I said, Judge Dillon was wrong. She should not have found that we don't have standing. She shouldn't have dismissed the case. We're going to go at it again. So I went back to the lawyers and I said, how would you like to do it all over again? They looked at me and they said, sure, we'll do it again. So we found new parties. You can't sue with the same old parties because that's just going back trying to recycle a case. So you need new parties. So I got Ann Fitzgerald is a party. The House Legislative District Committee for House District 20, Dickie Bell's district, that was a party. We had Ed Yenso, chairman of the Green Committee, as a party. Karen Kwiatkowski, a private individual, as a party. And the 6th District Congressional District Committee is a party. The logic was, if we get enough different parties complaining, it would be tough for a judge to say you don't have standing. I mean, we've got so many different people. How can you say we don't have standing? So we went back to court, and we won.
You did 5 more, go ahead.
What?
You did 5 more, go ahead.
5 more minutes, okay. So we went back, and we got the chief judge of the Western District Federal Court. And now we had 4 lawyers, unsolicited. People come to us and said, we believe what you're doing, and we're willing to help. So we went to, again, this time it's the same Western District Federal District Court. This time the case was heard in Roanoke. And the state now had increased its legal team. They were up to 3 lawyers. And in the first case, they used maybe what I call a second team. Attorney General on the first case sent their second team. This time around, they sent their first team. And the way the court's set up, you have the judge up here, you've got the plaintiff on this side, you've got the state over here, you've got 4 judges, 4 lawyers over here, 3 there, and they argue. And in federal court, it goes back and forth. The judge asks questions of the attorneys, and it's pretty much like a boxing match. Well, we won. The judge issued on January 18th, 2017, the judge ruled in our favor. Said it was a gross miscarriage of justice. It was clearly unconstitutional. What happened then is the state appealed. The state sought to overturn the district judge's rulings. 3 levels in federal court: district, appeals, supreme. If a party loses at district level, they have an automatic right, if they so choose, to appeal it to the appeals court. Appeals court work in regions. Our region is the 4th Circuit Court of Appeals in Richmond. Appeals courts work with 3 judges. It's always a panel of 3 judges. 1, 2, 3, and they will sit on a dais like this. And again, the plaintiffs are on the left, the defendants are on the right, and they argue away. We went to Richmond on the district ruled in January of 18 that we won the case. The case was heard on appeal in December of 18. And so we all went to Richmond. All of the people involved in the case filled up the visitors section, and we watched the judges and the attorneys go at it. On January 9th, 2019, 2 months ago, the appeals court issued its ruling. The appeals court said, we won. The Incumbent Protection Act is overturned, and it's dead and gone. The state has only one option. That would be to go to either an interim step to request the appeals court, all of the judges on the appeals court. There are about 12 judges on the appeals court. Have, instead of the 3 judges, the entire court hearing, they could appeal that, or they could go to the Supreme Court. Because it was so embarrassing for the state, and they did such a terrible job in their presentation at the appeals court, they decided not to ask for an on-bank hearing or to go to the Supreme Court. I'll tell you just a little vignette, and then I'll sit down. 3 judges up here, and they were clearly, from the arguments, the questions they were giving the lawyers, it appeared strongly that they were in favor of overturning the law. The lead attorney for the state was making an argument. So he's over here on this side of the room, and he's talking to the judge, and the judge says to the attorney for the state, and I don't recall his name, we'll call him Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith, I have a question for you, says Judge Wilkinson, Harvey Wilkinson, sitting in the center. Judge Wilkinson says, Mr. Smith, is there any law in any other state around the country like this Incumbent Protection Act? And Mr. Smith looks at the judge and says, Your Honor, I really can't answer that question. I don't know if there's any law like this in the entire country. The brief that we filed said that this was the only law like this in the country. The judges read the brief, Mr. Smith read the brief, and he looked at the judge and he lied to the judge. He said, I don't know, Your Honor, if there's any other law. About 15 minutes later, the judge was asking a question. He says, Mr. Smith, I know it's the only law like this in the country. And he was so, in my eyes, so disgraced and embarrassed for having lied to the judge, it had to have an impact on the judge. So the judges, when they rule, they can rule either unanimously or 2-1, one way or the other. Our 3 judges unanimously ruled that the law was unconstitutional, and it was struck off the books. And that's the story.
Question?
No, well, the
They
state,
have a one shot.
the state has announced it's not going to appeal, and so it's gone forever.
They can't change their mind
They
later.
can't change their mind. And if they do, I'll take them to court a 3rd time.
I oppose this law also, mainly because it basically set up a privileged class of people who had rights that the rest of us didn't have. They had the right to pick enough in our base. If you wanted to run, you had to run what was given you. And so I thought that was the reason I really opposed it as much as anything, is because it created a special class of citizens who have privileges that we don't have. We have the same thing going on in Congress right now. We have a privileged class of people up there who get retirements and benefits, and people who pay for their legal representation when they do something wrong. They have all kinds of things that the average citizen doesn't have. And this is a step in the right direction for righting some of those wrongs that incumbents have given themselves over the years. And Congress is much worse than the House of Douglas, I can promise you that.
Let me add an epilogue, if I may.
But go ahead.
Excuse me. When we started, we knew what we wanted to do. We knew the end point, and we were starting, but we didn't know all of the pieces in the middle. But because we wanted to get to the end, we took the first steps, like when I had lunch with John Worth at the beginning, and then there were other steps. At time, I can't tell you all the steps, but the lesson that we learned from this is if we have a noble goal, a good goal we want to achieve, we don't need to know all of the steps in between when we start out. And we're just like you. I like to say we're nobodies from nowhere. We're just ordinary folks. I mean, I work for the telephone company and just an ordinary, but you know, you really can be a David and Goliath if you put your heart and your mind to it.
Yes, I want to emphasize that I support what you've done, because one of the things that's bothered me about our system here in Virginia is the fact that we have a plurality rule. If there are more than 2 candidates, the candidate that gets the most votes, even if it's not a majority of the votes, is the nominee, both in the primaries and in elections for office. I object to that violently. We lost the Senate campaign against Tim Kaine because Corey Stewart won by plurality, not by majority. The fact that it was plurality and not majority meant there were a lot of Freitas people who stayed home, did not vote, and so Mr. Stewart, who was the nominee by plurality, lost by double digits. There were 12% of the votes cast in the primary for a third candidate. There was only 1.5% difference between Freitas and Stewart. I believe, as a party, that we should have forced a runoff election between Freitas and Stewart to get a majority. If Stewart had gotten a majority, the Freitas supporters, I was one, would have no excuse to stay home because the majority has spoken and we're very, very democratic. You go with the majority in this organization as well. I recommend that we do not do primaries, do not permit candidates to do primaries, because I foresee that a candidate who sees that it's going to be close gets a third party to compete and draw votes away so that the candidate that has the advantage will win by a plurality. It's happened before. It happened to us in the governor's race with the Democrats doing it. Okay? They put a lot of money in the third candidate's campaign that was used to make negative ads against Cuccinelli. So Cuccinelli lost again by 1.5% when normally the Libertarian or Independents would get 1.5%. They got 6%. 6%. And that was the difference between Cuccinelli winning and Terry McAuliffe.
Thank you.
I support you, and thank you very much for the work you've done.
We are fortunate tonight to have a good many guests with us, and all of our representatives are represented, and one in person. So Ryan, I'll give you the floor first to say anything you might want to say to us. He's come back to Richmond, give us a report from Richmond.
Well, thank you, Vance, for the opportunity to talk to y'all. And the first thing I'd like to say is, I have a tendency to talk softly, so if you get to where you can't hear me in the back, just raise your hand or something, and I'll try to raise my voice. And are you serious, Wendell? The first thing I'd like to do is, I've experienced one of the most humbling experiences a person could probably ever experience. And that was being chosen to go to Richmond to represent you. And I just wanted to thank everyone, let you know exactly how much I felt about your support and how much I appreciated it. And I just wanted to bring that up and tell you that it was just totally humbling to me to be able to do that. And then to top matters off, when I got to Richmond, I found out that this is actually the 400th year of the General Assembly, the oldest legislative body in the world. And I was the first person sworn into office in the 400th year, so that was even more humbling to know that that was going to happen, because it'll be this fall before they swear other people in. So the whole thing was just, it was very moving. You go into the Capitol and you sit there in those chairs and you think about all the great leaders in this world that have been there before you. Washington, Jefferson, all the great names that we had actually started out in our basic legislative body. And just sitting there thinking about that, looking around the building, it's not a single day that went by that I did not appreciate the opportunity y'all gave me to represent you. I just wanted to let you know how much I appreciated that. When I got to Richmond, I was one of these people that I felt like we had problems in our government. We don't know the problems we have in our government, I can tell you that. There is so much stuff that goes unreported that you would not believe it. But I basically found out that there was 3 things down there that I saw things that I was amused at, I saw things that troubled me, and I saw things that just flat out disgusted me. And I'm talking about legislation and things that went on the actual General Assembly itself, things that happened on the floor. Some of the things that I really got the most tickled about was the Democrats arguing about the budget. We're trying to return $1 billion to the taxpayers, and they're getting up and arguing about things going on. And one of them one day was arguing about the 1040 forms and the change that the federal government did in the 1040s. And, you know, this is Trump's fault. If it wasn't for Trump, we wouldn't be having this discussion. And I'm sitting there thinking, yeah, he's the one that turned the economy around. We definitely are having a problem because of Trump. So, you know, that kind of stuff was kind of funny to me, and you could get a chuckle every now and then. I'd lean over and say to the delegate beside me, nasty old Trump, he shouldn't have made the economy better. And, you know, we would just kind of laugh about it. And then I was troubled by some of the stuff that I saw, and it was basically attacks on our constitutional rights. It was a lot of different things, but the biggest one that most people were following back home was the gun laws that were introduced, taking away gun rights. And one morning I was in the office about 6 o'clock, and a gentleman from Goshen had sent me an email, House Bill such and such coming up today, and Courts of Justice Subcommittee, please vote against it. Well, I was in Courts of Justice Subcommittee, and I got on the computer and I wrote back, don't waste your time sending me any more emails about gun issues, because if a bill comes before me that has the word gun in it, it's getting voted down. And that was the last time he responded to me, because we voted down every bill that they introduced this year. And then we got into the things that made national news. And Kathy Tran's bill, where she testified in front of the other court subcommittee about her abortion bill. And to me, it was just totally disgusting that somebody would stand up and try to introduce a bill that would allow a baby to be murdered. And there's no easy way to say that. You can say it any way you want to say it, but to me, it's murder. You just, as the governor tried to say a few days later when he was trying to smooth everything out for everything, he said, well, you lay it there on the table beside you, and then you have a discussion with the mother about what she wants to do. Well, there's nothing to do. You have a living human being laying there on the table that is too small to protect itself. And if you do anything other than try to aid it and take care of it, which as a doctor our governor is required to do, you've committed murder. And that's just the way I felt about it, and I kind of feel that way about most of the abortion stuff. I think from what I've heard from people that have talked to me since I've been back the last couple of weeks, I think my voting record was satisfactory to everybody that I have talked to. A lot of people really follow very close how you vote, and everybody seemed comfortable with the fact that I pretty much voted right straight Republican Party lines all the way, and it was because that's the way that I felt the majority of the people I represented it. That's the way I felt they wanted me to vote. It's also easier to do, considering that I also felt the same way, so it just kind of made it a little bit easier. You have heard that I introduced 10 bills. I went down there with the intentions of not being a person to brag about how many bills he introduced, but I was reading an article the other day, and it was a classification of the delegates, and I introduced 10 bills, 7 of them made it to the House floor. The caucus asked me to pull one of them so we could change it a little bit for next year. So I pulled, and I had 6 pass go to the governor's office. It went through the Senate and went on to the governor's office to be signed into law. So So I was at 60% pass rate, which is it was in the top 1/3 of the delegates and the senators. So out of 140 people, I left down there in the top 1/3 with what I did bill-wise. So I had a very productive year, and I think we all will benefit from it. I hope you all appreciate the fact that we did return the $1 billion to the taxpayers and the businesses. We provided extra funding for schools, for universities to keep tuitions from going up on our students. And we put extra money into different things like your resource officers in schools. We put $16 million into that for extra funding on that. So we did a lot of very positive things this year.
I have a question for you. One, I'm not sure, is he a lieutenant governor there that's been accused of in priorities with several women there. One accused him of raping her, or whatever. And if that's the case, why has he not been brought in for questioning, even what's the results on that? I mean, you're an ex-officer, why wasn't he hauled in by cuffs and questioned in the whole 9 yards? Why is he remained behind in the office in seclusion and all that? Is he that high and mighty?
I will tell you,
that he's,
the Republican Party was working with the Democrat Party for about 3 weeks on what we were gonna do and what they wanted to do. They were split, then they got together, then they split again. And we finally, the last week, we told them, we are going to have our courts of justice. We're gonna pick 5 Republicans to sit on the courts of justice. You pick 5 Democrats, and we're gonna allow these 2 women to have their day to testify, and we're gonna invite the lieutenant governor. And that stuff is being worked out as we speak.
yeah, because, you haven't heard anything in the news or nothing, like, it's like all been swept under the rug, and
Yeah.
to me, it's like the Hillary Clinton affair, it's like, here today, gone tomorrow, nothing's ever said,
Yeah.
Well, it just, you have to be careful sometimes what you say. But nobody had an R beside their name, so it was looked at a little differently.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Weren't the alleged events out of state? So we really don't.
We don't have any real legal,
What can we stand?
unless the courts of justice decides that there was a crime, then it might go for impeachment, but all these events happened in other states, and that kind of makes it hard to deal with too on a local level.
Delegate
Campbell, thank you for your good work.
Thanks for coming over the mountain, Ronnie, and giving us a good report. I've been out there a lot of times too, so I know what you're doing. I remember the first time I went in there. I didn't get any bills passed when I went down there first because they had a Democrat majority. You were lucky you went in with a Republican majority. And they had a plan. And deal with the radio ad. They killed all the bills. So Doug and Wilson introduced 5 bills that's clapping like this on the radio ad. House Bill so-and-so killed in committee. House Bill so-and-so killed on the floor. House Bill so-and-so killed, Doug and Wilson is totally ineffective. He can't get any bills passed. That's what I had when I went down there. But I came home and said, look, they were good bills. If they didn't pass those bills, you don't need to get rid of me, you need to get rid of them. So there's an answer to everything, but you were fortunate you had a majority, but that majority is 2. We lose 2 seats in the House, you won't get any bills passed next year probably.
No.
And there'll be bills passed, every gun control bill you voted against this year will pass next year if we lose 2 seats in the House. That's how important it is that we hold these seats.
That's right.
That's how important it is. All right, now we have a representative from the Klein campaign. We're gonna say a word or two.
Josiah's leaving the state.
That's not Josiah.
No, I'm not Josiah. My name's Tyler Adams. Thank you for letting me speak for just a minute. I'll be pretty brief, but you guys may know me. I was here a couple years ago. It's been as Congressman Klein's campaign manager in 2015, so I know a few of y'all in the audience. But I just wanted to come and speak for a minute, give an update on your congressman and what has been going on in Washington, different things across the district. So one of the main priorities right now is obviously hearing from you all and from our other constituents about what issues you want to be brought to the Capitol. So we've had 4 town halls now. I think our most geographically closest one to you all has been Lynchburg, which was about 2 weeks ago. And we plan to have one in each locality throughout the district. We did take a priority on the localities that been performed the worst in November's election. So we started in Harrisonburg, Roanoke, Stanton, and Lynchburg. We lost the first 3 and got about 51.1 in Lynchburg. So just hearing from the other side is important as well. But obviously we get to hear from you all so often, and that's part of the reason why I'm here. But just a quick update about what's going on in DC. So probably the biggest issue going on right now that they're facing is House Bill 8, which is a piece of legislation which is intended to supposedly fix loopholes in background checks, and that's kind of a veneer, I would say, over the real intent of the bill. Ben is opposed to the bill. So it came up, and essentially if you really do a deep dive into it, it's really going to change fundamentally just about everything that we know about handling firearms and just being folks who are responsible gun owners. It would interject government in the way of any transaction, private transaction of a firearm, including a loaning of a firearm to a neighbor, including trying to give somebody a firearm to store while you're going to be out of town for an extended period. The government would essentially require you to come to them and ask for permission to do these basic things that every responsible firearm owner does just in the normal handling of a gun. And none of that stuff's really being talked about. It's all about gun safety, supposedly, and they try to put pressure, and they do put a lot of pressure on Congressman Klein and a lot of others by saying, well, 90% of Republicans support that. Well, I've not met a single Republican that supported it. I've not met one Republican who's ever said, I think that if I want to loan Smokey a gun, that I've got to go to the federally licensed firearms dealer and fill out paperwork, and then when he wants to give me back my gun, I've got to go back down and ask for the government permission to get my gun back. So that's the kind of thing that Congressman Klein is fighting in D.C., and it's not going to get covered quite the way it should, by media outlets. But that's part of the reason why I'm here to talk to you. And if there is the 90% in this room that supports that, then let me know. I don't see anybody jumping up to support it though. So anyway,
doing the right thing.
Thank you. So anyway, I'll stick around afterwards and pass out my card. If you guys have any questions about either the campaign side of things or the official side of things, please feel free to reach out, and I'll be in here to that. We still have our district office down in Lynchburg. It's in the same location that Congressman Goodlatte had his, same employee as well, Aaron. So we just want to be accessible and want to hear from you all. And again, thank you for the opportunity.
What's that address in Lynchburg?
No, I don't know offhand, but I can look it up before the end of the meeting and let anybody know.
The 900 block of Main Street, 3rd floor.
Thank you. 900 block of Main
We
Street.
have a representative from Senator Peak. Will you come up and give us a little rundown? So all of our 3 representatives have had someone here tonight to talk to us.
All right, hello. I'm Dan Dodds. I'm with Senator Peak's campaign. I'm his LA and his campaign manager. Just wanted to come out here, reach out to you guys. Senator's sorry he can't be here. He's on vacation. But besides that, if you guys have any questions about session, I think the good delegate covered most of it. Important bills we did have was the Central Virginia Training Center. Got that out of Ed and Health, but it did get killed in finance this year, so I know that's an issue that's near and dear to a lot of people in Lynchburg and Amherst. We had a lot of other good bills go through. Don't want to take up too much of your time. I know it's getting late, and I'm just going to be stealing the delegate's thunder. He already covered pretty much everything I wanted to touch on. If you guys have any questions, I'll stick around. We're also still getting signatures for the senator. We're turning them in later this week when the legislative district chair is back in town. And also, if you'd like to get involved in our campaign, we're going to be kicking off our campaign next month. So feel free to talk to me afterwards, sign the petitions, see how you guys can get involved.
So we have a special guest here with us tonight, the 6th District Chairman. I notice she is here. And would you like to come up and say a word or two?
I am merely an observer, there's nothing to report.
Okay, well, thank you for coming. Appreciate you coming with us. Jay, thank you for coming. We also have Wendell Walker, who's chairman of the Lynchburg Committee, who's visiting with us tonight. And Jay Burner from Harrisonburg, I believe. Do we have any other guests here tonight? So over here, y'all introduce yourselves. Your guest.
Isaiah Knight, chairman of Lynchburg Area Young Republicans. Great to be here.
Okay.
And I'm Christian Raymond, Executive Director of Lynchburg Area Young Republicans and Vice Chair in Appomattox. So.
Anyone else that I have overlooked?
Is there a Reverend Knowles in here by chance? No? Okay. That was somebody that contacted me through the website.
Okay, good. Well, I have, that's all that I have on the agenda tonight. If anyone has an announcement to make, give you an option. All right, Ryan?
We have scheduled some meet and greets, and Fernando, would you give the dates on those for me?
Yeah, April 6th, in this same room, we're gonna have a meet and greet for Delegate Campbell. If you guys could just help us out and invite some friends. We posted a Facebook event about it. That would help us a lot.
If you'll get the information, we can put it on our website.
Yeah, we'd appreciate that.
What time?
It's gonna be at 6 p.m. on not April 6th. Yeah, I apologize. It's gonna be March 20th. March 20th at 6 p.m. This same building.
Okay.
I had some bumper stickers here in case anybody wanted some, but I only had a handful. They were given to me by our vice chair for the 6th District, John Massoud. It says, "My child is an honor student, my governor is a moron." So I only have a handful, so if you want one, please just grab one. Thank you.
Lynchburg Area Young Republicans are having a Freedom of Information Act workshop. We're going to have the executive director from Virginia Coalition.
Repeat it, I couldn't hear you.
Oh, yeah, sure. The Lynchburg Area Young Republicans are doing a Freedom of Information Act workshop. We have the executive director from the Virginia Coalition for Open Government. That's going to be coming and giving a presentation, along with Brian Davison, who beat Loudoun County in court over some freedom of speech and some FOIA issues as well. So it's free to attend, and we'd love for folks to come and learn all about FOIA.
So give us the information, we'll post that also. I tell you, the Freedom of Information Act is a wonderful thing because Judicial Watch has been suing the government now for many, many years. And they just don't reply. And they have to go back to the court order to make them do something they should be doing automatically. It's really atrocious how the Justice Department and most other branches of government just ignore a Freedom of Information request. And you, I said in one, they just ignore us. The Judicial Watch at least have enough lawyers to go to court and make them do these things, but that is really an important thing for us to find out what is going on in our government. Because governments tend to hide what they do wrong, so they don't want to be held accountable. And I really would encourage you, I'd like to put Judicial Watch's website on our website so people can see if you want to get with them and see what they do, because they're doing a powerful job for us. They're protecting our liberties more than Congress is. That's for sure. That's all we have on the agenda. We'll take a motion now from someone who.
I'd like to say something, Vance.
Okay.
When I first came to this meeting, I was not a signed-up Republican in January. I complained about some dirty dealings that went on in Amherst in the firehouse primary, where known Democrats were solicited to come vote in the primary. People in this committee. I thought that that was wrong. I didn't vote in it for two reasons. I was not in town at the time the polls were open, and I also was not signed up as a Republican. I didn't think I ought to vote in it if I wasn't a Republican. I thought I described that as dirty dealings. And people who did not vote for Jimmy Ayers, who was a friend of mine, were spoken to by members of this group in nasty ways. There have been posts on the internet saying bad things about them. And what's even worse is people in here have been saying that the Rockbridge people are crooks and thugs because of Ronnie winning by one vote. Now, that kind of stuff has got to stop because you're killing the Republican Party. You're going to put a Democrat in office. They had a meeting in Rockbridge not long ago in which the parties making up a sixth district for the president. Doug Smith, who is the chairman of the Rockbridge Republicans, was running the meeting. Vance was there, as well as Augusta and Beth. There was a big discussion about what to do with the ballots, and some people wanted to look at them and check them. Amherst wanted to look at them and check them, and they voted not to do it. As the meeting was ending, Doug Smith, the chairman of the Rockbridge Party, was standing with the Rockbridge voters' roll at his feet. There was no one close to him except the chairman of the Augusta Party. When he finished shredding the ballots, which all agreed to do, he turned around and the roll was missing from behind him. He called the Augusta chairman and asked him if he picked it up, and he said no. He called Vance, and Vance told him to meet him outside. Vance took him under his umbrella to his car and opened the trunk. They looked inside, and there were a number of envelopes with Amherst written on it, and he discovered one envelope that was new with nothing written on it. He picked that one up and opened it up, and the Rockbridge voters' roll was in there. No permission was given by anybody from Rockbridge to take that. There was a person who was there waiting for a woman who was at the meeting who watched Vance approach his car and open the trunk and put a bunch of what appeared to be envelopes in it. And then Teresa Allman up there and Ginger Burke approached the rear of the car and they left. When Doug called Vance, Vance went and opened the trunk. Now, I don't know who took the roll and put it in an envelope. They were behind Doug Smith. No one was near him when he started doing that except the Augusta man. And you can say, well, it accidentally happened. Well, accidentally those papers went into a new envelope, and accidentally they were carried outside and accidentally put in the trunk. I don't know whether there's going to be any criminal investigation of this or not, but whoever did it did a bad thing, because it could be considered larceny. If it was worth more than $200, it's grand larceny, which is punishable by 20 years of penitentiary. If it's less, it's petty larceny. There's no reason for this stuff to keep going on. It's like Hillary Clinton when she lost the election. We need to get behind somebody and stop this dirty deal. Some people in this room, after that meeting, were known to have told people at the meeting that Rockbridge County was crooked. Well, I haven't seen anything crooked out of Rockbridge County, but this roll that was taken and in the possession of Amherst people is not right. This stuff has got to stop. People in here are sending hate mail over the social media to people because they are not supporting this or supporting that. I want to tell them about libel and slander. And when you besmirch someone's reputation and do them harm, you're civilly liable. everybody goes to court, you may win, but you're gonna have a powerful lawyer's fee. It's just stupid behavior, and it's got to stop. You want the Democrats in, you keep it up. Now, when I talked to him before about the Democrats coming and voting, Claudia Tucker said Jimmy didn't have anything to do with it, talking to Jimmy Ayers. But Jimmy Ayers is a friend of mine, and I know him at least as well or better than anybody in this room. If those people had told Jimmy they were gonna take those voter votes, he would have told them not to do it. But whoever took them and did it, Vance is in trouble because it was in his car. And it's gonna splash back. When it comes out, it's gonna splash on Jimmy too. So the person they were trying to help, they hurt. It's bad, you gotta stop it.
All right, Stark, I agree with you, it's bad, it's gotta stop, but you just started up again. First off, you weren't there, and you didn't see what happened, you were told what happened, so you got hearsay evidence, which, as you know, is not very good in court. You wanna hear the real story? You should have asked me
I heard
before
it
you.
from the people who were there.
Well, you should have heard it from me.
We were all there.
Wait, I'm talking, I didn't interrupt you one time.
Okay.
So I'm talking now. There was one bunch in Amherst, when they put the envelopes in, they forgot to write the name on the other side. They had to put a blank envelope in. These envelopes were all sealed. Evidently, that blank envelope, Doug Smith had a blank envelope too, with nothing on it. And then somebody thought that was ours, it had nothing on it, put it in the pile we had. I picked up a big handful and took it and put it back in my car. We went and had lunch. If I stole that on purpose and known about it, I would have stopped to eat lunch. I'd have gone home and copied them and sent them back somewhere and outside the party. So I didn't hesitate to let Doug look back in my car. So I didn't steal them. They were picked up accidentally out of a pile, and it had no name on it. It was not something that had been resealed. It was a blank envelope on the outside, had his registration list on the inside. That's it. So there's no way I knew it was his in the first place. I thought it was out.
Well, how did the roll get from by his feet into the envelope?
I had a pile right here. He was standing right there, and there was two piles right there. I don't know how they got in it.
It's a very small room.
Huh?
A very small room.
Yeah, it was a very small room.
We could always check the video again and see if it got picked up on the video, because we had the whole thing videoed.
That would be a good idea to look at that before we start making charges.
I'm not sure it is.
Well, you made a statement
Stirring it up again.
that stirred it up again, but that's what happened, and I don't think we're in trouble at all, because I didn't steal a damn thing. Anybody else have anything to say about this? Have a good time, get it out.
We had a nice lunch. Good lunch.
Yeah, we did have a good lunch. All right, if nothing else, I'll take a motion now from.
So moved.
Known as the moving man. He's moved that we adjourn, I assume is the motion.
Absolutely.
Is that a second? There's a second over here. There's been a further motion, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no? Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate the crowd. Sorry to have you.
When did you say you paid?